I really wish it didn't take me so long to make this video, but sometimes those are the hands we're dealt. I ended up playing all of Manhunt in October of 2023, and am just now finally getting around to actually talking about it. My biggest fear is that I'd end up forgetting my entire playthrough of the game, but for the most part, I've managed to maintain a pretty clear idea of the overall experience, but we'll see. So instead of this being a more by-the-book take, such as I play the game, then write the script, I'm going to instead just review my old footage and see how I got on, retell the events, and add as we go. Just as a bit of context, I did stream Manhunt, so all of my footage and candid commentary is from those sessions. This kid is so edgy and horrible, it's terrible for the children, this game is hilarious. And thank goodness for that. If I had only done an offline playthrough with raw footage, I guarantee you I would have had to have played through the game all over again, and that was not something I was willing to do. My original run took over 20 hours. Don't ask me why, it just did. Firstly, I want to state, this isn't going to be a theory craft or lore video. I won't be talking about the game's supposed connections to any of the GTA series or other Rockstar titles, nor will I be talking about Manhunt 2 in any capacity. This is strictly on Manhunt and what is presented to us, though I may cover a few things here and there because I do like some of the context given for certain locations and characters. But I do recommend looking up any videos that do discuss all the stuff surrounding this game because a lot of these rabbit holes are very interesting. I certainly went into this playthrough with a lot of it in mind, and those bits are one of the reasons, amongst other things, why I wanted to play Manhunt in the first place. Let me go over that part real quick. Like most people who grew up in the 2000s, we all heard of the crazy snuff film game, where you strangled people with plastic bats and did horrific killings for the thrill of it. I don't actually remember any press or magazine articles or even game trailer footage of it, so a lot of us just assumed it was some urban legend. Cut us some slack, we were all babies. This game came out in 2003, I was like 12 at the time? Yeah, I didn't even own a PS2, or have the internet for that matter. Yes, young people, I remember not having the internet. Carry on to being an actual, person with a brain, I learned that the game is in fact real, and my favorite actor, Brian Cox, is the creepy guy telling you to kill stuff. So in an effort to play every game he's been in, cause why not, I realized that I was gonna have to play Manhunt. So to all three of the Brian games, this one was by far the most daunting. Syndicate is a bog standard FPS that you can beat in one sitting. Killzone, despite being a massive collection of games, is pretty much in the same boat, despite some exceptions when it comes to gameplay and platforms. But Manhunt, yeah, I knew I was gonna have a hard time with this one. Despite my love of stealth games, I'm not as good as them as I'd like to be and take a lot of modern gaming accessibility for granted. Manhunt has none of that. It's got two modes, fetish and hardcore, and that's it. You either get good or you go home. And figuring out which version to play was its own challenge. I do own it on original hardware, the PS2, but for the sake of my sanity and time, I often try to find other ways to play and record gameplay. Luckily, the game is also on PC and current PlayStation consoles. Since the PC version needs modding to run effectively, and that could potentially color my first playthrough differently, I decided to go for the PS5. And yeah, that didn't go well. The emulator at the time on the PlayStation 5 was garbage. Dirty artifacting in the menus, textures flickering, and stuff just not loading right. So I said screw it and tried the other way. And yeah, that was broken too. A lot of the texture layers ended up not working no matter how many settings I tried. I almost got to the point where I was gonna pull out my PS2 and just pray I could get through it and capture it correctly. But then I realized, oh wait, I still have my Pro. I dusted that buddy off, plugged him in, and of course, it works fine. I literally have no reason to play my PS4 Pro other than Manhunt. It's become the Manhunt box. I believe the PS5 did add a new emulator for PS2 games, but honestly, I don't care enough to check, and if I do while writing this script, I'll just add a section here with an update on how Manhunt runs. I did check, it still runs awful. I'm not gonna bother with character or gameplay sections, because in all honesty, this game only has two characters you really need to think about, Cash and the director, and in terms of gameplay, it's easier to just explain my struggles with it as I go along. Yes, I know about all the unique hunters, but it's easier to just talk about them as I go, because many of them need context. And I should really get into the main body. I think this intro has been long enough. So the game opens with a recording from the journalist, she doesn't have a proper name, talking about how she needs to uncover the crimes of someone named Starkweather, and that involves an individual who was due for death row. It cuts over to said footage of the execution, then Cash waking up as a voice calls out to him. As he tries to escape the room, the director offers him his freedom in return for some favors. Essentially, the whole story gimmick of this game is that Jane Zero Cash, our runner, is dumped into the slums of Cursor City, a place known for its corruption and crime, and is tasked by the director to kill criminals and gang members in exchange for his eventual freedom. The caveat, it's demanded of him to make each kill as gruesome as possible so the director can film the actions as a snuff film. Despite the overall idea of make stuff as bloody as possible, the game is actually centered around stealth more than combat, for the most part. You do get a collection of items more catered towards all-out assault, axes, knives, firearms, but you're mostly given one-time use items such as shards of glass or plastic bags, so it's easier just to focus on executions. Also, the shadow system in this game is utterly broken. It took me a while to really understand how the stealth worked, but honestly, if you just stand in place where there is a clear indicator of no light, your little cache down at the bottom will go bluish. The enemy will lose sight of you almost immediately or run past, meaning as long as you stay in that particular zone, if the enemy gets close enough, you can just execute them and never get caught doing it. I would also just reset areas a lot because it was easier than waiting for the enemy to calm down. For a PS2 game, the checkpoint system was pretty good, again, for the most part. Once you figured out a level, you could run through it pretty quickly. Long story short, I struggled a lot in the beginning. The main thing I picked up on was obviously running would alert the enemies, you getting an indicator on your radar for that. It'd also get you decent indicators on where the enemies were, as well as their alert levels, it being either green, orange, or red. I think it also accounts for elevation, though I can't quite remember. But the radar wasn't overkill on here's all the enemies, it really only showed you ones that you have alerted or if they were close by and moving. Executions are done by sneaking up on hunters when Cash is in range. He raises his armed hand to tell the player that he can perform the command. There's also other levels of executions indicated by the 3 arrows, but I didn't learn about those until much later on. So yeah, you won't see any for a while. I'll explain once I get there. And yes, if you're wondering, I did the tutorial about 3 times, but it's been so long trying to find a functioning copy of the game, I forgot most of it. A lot of my beginning playthrough was struggling with the controls. And as I messed up horribly and run away from the literal second guy of the game, yes, the game does account for elevation. That's a really nice touch. You actively don't control the camera unless you're in first person or holding a firearm. It instead moves with you dynamically as you move Cash. This was probably my biggest hurdle because man was it hard for me to just remember that's how it worked. I kept moving the right stick and would randomly just go into first person, then be confused as to why. Okay, I need to just get through the gameplay beats. First section gives you 2 chances to understand stealth, then a small combat tidbit. A VHS that gives you a chance to save, then you get into the main body of the chapter, which is where you're taking out the first gang called the Hoods. Each zone has its own set of challenges and its own gang that is mainly themed around a gimmick. The first part is just you breaking out of a mall and into a, you guessed it, another section of slums. This bit focuses more on telling the player about reusable weapons as well as how light and things like gravel work, something that if you step over will alert enemies. While the ground in Manhunt is crunchy, or goopy, or sandy, or clanky, there's always big piles of strawberry jam everywhere. The game very much benefits from the method of let's make some noise to get enemies to break their patrols and make it easier to take them out, especially if you can lure them into a dark area where it's easy to get the drop on them. Okay, so in order to get to the next area, we need a crowbar. Take out some hunters, get started with the guy who has it, then learn that certain enemies will rigidly stick to areas they're meant to be in. This is both a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it makes it easier to plan how to get rid of them, other times they're in spaces that are near impossible to effectively plan in. In the case of this guy, nah, it was pretty easy to scum him. The game once again throws a combat section to try and teach me grapples. Yeah, that ain't happening. I managed through it, then went about my day. And look, the game doesn't take your stuff between chapters. There are modern games that can't even get that right. Time to kick a trash can and ruin some guy's night. Or a lot of guys' nights. And also, time for me to test the limits of not only my patience, but the patience of the game itself. Beating on walls and running around like my backside is on fire just to get these guys to come out so I can handle them effectively. At least that's what I tell myself. We're also introduced to throwables, the first being a brick, and I cannot handle how this game handles Cash's inventory, and by I cannot handle, I mean I absolutely love it. So any weapon you have on hand, it will be on Cash's person in one way or another. Large weapons on his back or hand, one-time use items hanging off his belt, and yeah, a whole brick in his back pocket. This is just a great way of making an inventory without it having to be a whole separate menu or pause screen. Well, absolute perfection. Once you get to the other side of the sun area, these mercenary gas mask dudes with guns basically beat up Cash and carry him off to another part of the city. Again, we get another recording of more dudes in more masks getting called slurs by a massive dude in a beret. Essentially, the director lied and we got more killing to do. The whole scrap junkyard place full of weird hockey mask supremacists was basically my first breaking point. I had ended up only really playing this game in about 2 to 3 hour chunks, because I would get to certain points and really just get pushed to my limit on how much I could tolerate. Not really knowing the mechanics that well, mixed with the dated controls, really did take it out on me. So they decided to give you a nail gun, which is supposed to work well as the stealthy gun, but honestly, I never properly used it. Due to how a lot of the patrols were set up, it's just easier to bait the enemies, run away, than take them down one by one. Was it a lot slower? Yeah, but it was better than fighting the horrible aim assist the game forces upon you. Essentially, they give you the ability to blow up propane tanks because it's a game, but the aim assist would always focus on the closest target and never let you effectively hit anything else. The snap is aggressive, like, really bad. It messed up a lot of my runs when I got to the actual shooting sections, because it would focus on random enemies regardless of their proximity to the player. If you're wondering why this game took me over 20 hours to beat, I think you can actually now sort of see the reason as to why, because the easiest method unfortunately took the longest. So I haven't wanted to mention the enemy dialogue or those of the director just yet because I felt like I needed to wait, but yeah, I think I finally need to talk about it. In an effort for this game to be as edgy as possible, every manner of insult, swear, and phrasing is used to get some kind of shock out of the player. And honestly, 90% of it is just extremely funny. I think most of the flavorful dialogue comes from these white supremacists that run the junkyard, often calling Cash a mongrel or talking about white purity. Heck, they even have Confederate flag masks as well as some form of fascist symbolism on their jackets or actual bodies. But the director is where it gets uncomfortable. Some of the things these guys got Brian to say, like, yeah, he's an actor, I get it, but oh my lord. There are certain times where I will just yell incoherently because I really don't want to hear Brian, the man I consider in a parasocial way to be my own parental figure, saying how much he gets off to me bludgeoning a man to death with a crowbar. Do we did last time. Just wait in the corner. Don't want to hear it. It's gross and I hate it. Like, I love Starkweather. He's spicy and sleazy and just all around horrific and gross, but some of these lines I could do without. I really don't need Brian whispering BS in my ears. Though I do find it hilarious that even the director draws a line at racism. He really wants Cash to take out these supremacists, and who am I to argue? I want to take them out too. Interesting how a game from over 20 years ago is still so poignant. Okay, what am I doing? Oh yeah, so I gotta take out the hunters, get a gas canister, fill this magnet crane with fuel, and then move a fridge to get to the next area. And the whole while you're doing this, guys are shooting you with nail guns and you gotta squash them with the fridge. The controls are as clunky as you imagine. Again, limits are being tested because by this point I wasn't really enjoying the gameplay loops, and any time they threw a twist into it, it was more annoying than interesting. And yes, if you die at the crane, you gotta carry the canister all the way back, and it's extremely slow. I don't even want to talk about the next bit you have to do to get to the other crane, because I actually did like a soft rage quit. I'd already been playing for over 3 hours and really didn't want to keep attempting this nonsense. I finally got through it in the next session, but it took a lot longer than it needed to. I'm not even gonna say how long, because it's honestly embarrassing. It took me over an hour. Cash is once again jumped by the gas mask dudes and thrown into the entrance of a zoo where we see the red beret guy again with some hunters dressed in ghillie suits with rifles and machetes. Despite the war dogs supposedly being far tougher and more aggressive, the zoo ended up being the area that made me actually start liking this game. There aren't as many areas where you can hide, but it was a lot easier for me to get a handle on situations and understand how to deal with stuff. I still took the slower approach, but it was a lot more manageable to recover from situations, either by just dying or starting over at a checkpoint or running and hiding. Also, I just really love this section because the zoo has some funny set pieces, especially for such a dark game. These little hippo bins are adorable. Essentially, I felt like I was finally understanding the mechanics of the game. And honestly, I'm glad, because if I hadn't grasped it by this point, I don't know if I would have honestly been able to beat Manhunt, because once you get past the zoo, every enemy type you fight just gets worse in terms of aggression and firepower, and not in a subtle way. This is also the level that gives you your first real gun, and it's a tranq rifle with a scope that basically simulates motion sickness. It's awful. I will cut the game some slack. It came out in 2003, and ADS, especially through a scope, was a really weird thing to program, and there was no clear template for it yet, especially in a third-person action game. Well, at least it's only for one section, right? Right? You'll see. So we get through the rest of the zoo, and oh my god, I forgot about the captive family section. This bit is ridiculous. Not because it's difficult or anything like that, but just because of how confusing it's meant to be narratively. Cash was a prisoner put on death row. We don't know his actual crime, but the fact that his family would care or he'd care about them is so odd to me. These people don't even have names. It's assumed to just be like his mom, sister, dad, and then his uncle, brother, and we don't even have to actually free or save them? Basically, if you get seen, the hunters will kill one of them, so you have to use stealth a lot if you want to do the area correctly. This bit took a while due to my need to want to actually save all of them. I used the tranq rifle, but ultimately gave up because they only stayed down for a short amount of time and it really wasn't worth it. Again, slowest method worked the best. I also realized that I basically spent the entirety of this section just talking about everything I've ever seen with Brian Cox in it, as well as my opinions on his roles and characters. If I remember correctly, I think I made a conscious decision to just open his IMDb and do that. It was a lot. I feel bad for whomever was on screen during that time and had to deal with my unapologetic onslaught of random facts. I guess I figured it would make for a good distraction to help me get through this mess. God damn it, I wish I liked normal things. So, a lot of people will ask me when I tell them when I tell them who my favorite actor is, they'll immediately be like, oh, what movies of his do you suggest? I can think of maybe 2 movies that Brian is in that I could suggest to normal people. If you're into horror, you can obviously watch The Ring in Rushmore. Rushmore is the second kind of like normal movie that he's in, because it's a Wes Anderson movie. Okay, this section was longer than I thought it was gonna be, and it basically took up my whole third session of this game. Again, I do really like the zoo. It's a very fun level, but the trial and error of having to save the family, plus some of these guys actually having proper guns, really did wear on me. Also, gorilla. After saving everyone, you enter what I guess is an aquarium. Of course, the game does the whole gimmick of exit is open, gonna throw some enemies at you, not once, but twice. I did manage to make use of the tranq gun just to get away and recompose myself, let the other group do whatever, then booked it out the door to the exit. The guys in mercenary gear once again take Cash to another part of the city. We see a bunch of hunters in graveyards and churchyards, then the big man in the red beret bossing people around again. Cash is dumped into a boarded-off mall, where the director tells him he needs to find a videotape and a camera, and we're introduced to hunters who pretty much only carry firearms. Firstly, the movement with the firearm is so much better than pretty much any kind of movement in the game. It essentially puts you in a tanky third-person view that allows you to look in any direction pretty smoothly. I use it a lot because sometimes I'd be in areas with really narrow hallways and funky corners and need the extra help. It's once again slower, but man did it make things easier. The mall is also one of those times where the game becomes sort of a puzzle more than just action or combat. You end up having to fight your way through this place with limited ammo, and there are very few times where you can actually kill hunters without your firearm. So if you get to the top and run out of ammo, it's nearly impossible to take out the 1 or 2 guys you have left. And yes, you do have to get right up on them to do a headshot because the assist will snap to the torso and these guys eat bullets. Once you get all the components, you end up seeing what's on the tape, and unfortunately, it's one of Cash's family members getting killed. Possibly his sister. From what I gather, this last family member is basically the only one you truly had to save, so the game is implying that, if you got all the other ones killed, that all of Cash's family is now dead. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. He throws the TD in anger, and the game carries on. And now we get to the infamous drunken bum escort mission, which is a lot longer than you realize, but not nearly as hard as it should be. Basically, you can leave this guy in any shadowy location and just clear out areas, then carry on to the checkpoint without much hassle. He never wanders off or intentionally tries to alert hunters. He'll actually walk into the closest area of cover, so yeah, he's literally a non-issue. I remember a lot of people sort of saying that this was one of the worst escort missions in a game, but I don't really see how unless you were constantly rushing or didn't realize you could just park him without the game punishing you. I don't need to keep repeating it, but yeah, the slowest option is the safest. The one section I honestly did have a hard time with was the churchyard, because the game decided that shotguns were going to be thrown into the mix and give you some of those amazing aimbot assisted enemies. That's such an oddly specific phrase, but if you're familiar with this era of games, it makes sense to you. Enemies either couldn't hit you at all or were so accurate you could barely move without being shot. Manhunt is the latter. They just decided cranking it up to 11 would be funny for this last part, but I got through it. I feel like a lot of the placement and segments in this game were literally done for the fact that it would be funny if the player just got their hide handed to them in the most abrupt and relentless way. There is a pretty awkward end to the whole section with the Tramp, and because of this is probably one of the few places I'll bring up rumors, theories, cut content, etc, etc. So one of the things people like to point out in this segment is that it was eventually going to end in some form of boss fight against someone called Scarecrow, who was the leader of the Smileys, one of the Hunter Gang's cash encounters, and that either this fight was going to happen at the end of the Escort or later on in the game as some big reveal. That this bumbling drunk hobo was actually a masked serial killer. Obviously, that doesn't occur, and the only cutscene we get is Cash going to an abandoned factory. I don't know the actual details as to why this character was taken out, but like I stated earlier in the video, this game has tons of cut content and theories based around it. And of course it happened. I don't know how the heck it actually happened, but it did. For some reason, my past self was insistent that these 7 VODs were the only Manhunt ones, and didn't feel the need to check over the footage again to make sure I had every part. My other biggest frustration is I remember checking my VODs like 5 times. Ugh, whatever. Luckily, the only section I lost footage of was the chemical plant in the beginning of the asylum. As of writing this, I'm still debating if I want to go back and just replay those or look on YouTube. I know one is obviously easier than the other, but the whole point of this video is to recollect my own candid reactions to the game itself. And of course, since it's been so long, I don't honestly remember these levels that well. It also means I'll have to pull the PS4 out again, or suffer through a buggy mess on the PS5. I'll figure it out. Okay, so I basically decided to play through the PS5 version and just ignored the bugs, so I'm sorry about all the weird textures in this footage. Blame Sony's crusty emulator. I managed to do all the chemical plant again, since that one is mainly a shooting section, and all I had to do was remember the clunky aiming controls and keep an eye on my ammo. But the asylum? Yeah, no. I got through the first bit, remembered the awful gardening area, and said screw that. This section is full of extremely weird patrol patterns and lots of dudes with guns. Luckily, my stopping point in my original footage is like a couple of steps after that. So yeah, let's move on past this weird little road bump. When you're in the asylum, the director asks you to take the hunter above to the guard room in order to progress. So we do just that. Once you do, we now get to the one section of this game that I was stuck on way longer than I needed to be, not because of the game itself, but because of my own incompetence. So a little earlier on, I said there were levels of executions. Depending on how long you're held on an enemy, the indicator changing from white to yellow to red, each one would give a different kill animation. I didn't bother with this because it's just mainly for points and I wasn't focused on that. In this specific section, you have to get those higher level of executions, and yeah, it took me ages to figure that out. I even had to Google how the heck to even do it because the game only tells you once that it exists, and that's way back in the beginning. In this part, they give you a hammer and an infinite amount of hunters to go at. It took me forever to realize that I could easily cheese this level by just randomly killing one, going to where they spawn, and just wait. Okay, done. Oh my god. Okay, at least you know the cheese, KT. The cheese didn't work as effectively with the bat kills, but by gum, I did it. Next section is just more shooting. The guy's once again doing that ooga booga guys jump you thing, and you instantly dying. I'm so used to it by this point. The game also decides to give me a pump action shotgun, cause stealth is just once again not gonna be a thing. Stepping into the shower block, the director proceeds to call us his big ugly Alice and tells us to chase after a guy in a giant rabbit suit. This one also tested my limits. I realized when it came to the gun combat in this game, it was honestly easier just to find a place where you could funnel in enemies to mow them down with close range headshots, or find a good enough cover that allows you to take down most of the ones in the area. It wasn't always effective, but it worked a lot better than just running around and hoping you got a random shot off. Yes, I know that's effective in every game with third-person action, but this is very much the case in Manhunt. The built-in aim assist is not your friend. I've talked about this. Following the rabbit, you get to a balcony overlooking the main area, and the game essentially gives you a free pass to shoot the massive guys down below without any real repercussions. A lot of them don't have guns, so yeah, fun times. Once Cash steps into the workshop, the rabbit heads off, hunters show up, and I think this is the part where the director is like, oops, sorry, I'm gonna kill you off now, cause I'm a bad man. Again, no real struggle in dealing with them. Getting outside, we conveniently run into those suited up mercenary guys again. I think they're called Cerberus. Yeah, they're Starkweather's like main guys. I haven't even talked about him as an actual character or that he's the director. How did I get this far into the video without even mentioning that? What is wrong with me? So yeah, the guy who's been talking in our ear this whole time is some big Hollywood director named Lionel Starkweather, who's made tons of films but also likes to dabble in making a bunch of gang members and maladjusted veterans fight one another in a broken down city for his amusement, amongst other things. He basically looks like Brian, which I'm sure was pretty intentional. I mean, if you're gonna use him, just make the characters look like him. Even Killzone did that to a degree, and of course in Syndicate it's just his actual face. Okay, shooting guys. I always say this is one of the hardest sections, but when it comes to this one, I actually mean it. The game doesn't cut you off from the interior of the asylum to a certain point, so you can run all the way back and pick up random ammo drops and painkillers. Also, random jump scare. My candid reaction says it all. You sons of gorillas. They put a jump scare there. That scared the crap out of me. Played all the Callisto Protocol and that's what got me. Even watching this scene back, I'm so confused as to what I actually had to do. So you need to go to the watchtower, kill the rabbit, take the key he drops, then you have to fight off even more of these mercenary guys. The game gives you a sniper rifle, but remember that awful scope? Yeah, I found a better method. After some trial and error, I found out that you can just stand at the top of the tower, coax them up to you, and blow their heads off one by one until the group of enemies becomes more manageable. Honestly, it felt like they were infinite with how many I took down before I could actually get out of the yard. Once we do, we see the red beret guy again, Ramirez, Starkweather telling him that he needs to put an end to Cash. Again, another character I haven't really put a name to until now, but this is probably the best time to do it. Ramirez is the head of the War Dogs, the guys in ghillie suits who we primarily ran into at the zoo a while back. He catches Cash off guard, beats the snot out of him, then takes his guns and essentially forces him into a game of hide and seek in this rundown apartment area. It's ironic that Ramirez is upset because his guys haven't found Cash, even though he's the reason he's run off to begin with. But yay, we finally get back to some actual stealth. You spend time taking out a few normal guys, then hunters with shotguns show up, and yeah, it goes about as well as you expect. We eventually end up going inside the apartment block where it turns into a small hallway shootouts and with shotguns and funny enemy pathing. The little cutties of darkness you get in this section honestly made some of the hiding bits really funny, because like, what do you mean this guy can't see Cash? He's literally right there, in that doorway. Once you get it to the top, you have to go back down and chase Ramirez outside, and yes, if you die, you have to do the climb all over again. There's a timer on the screen for when he'll call in backup. It feels like a game over, but it just means more guys will come in and you have to deal with those. I don't honestly know if you can kill Ramirez in the apartment block or not. I figured you can, but I have no idea. Also, I know there's a lot of cool ways you can probably take it out, and I'm sure people who have played this game are yelling at the screen on what those are, but all I did was grab a sniper rifle, walk down to the door, aim at his head above the little concrete medium, and blast him. It wasn't stylish, but it got the job done. Getting through the gate, the journalist, again, she doesn't have a name, picks up Cash, then the two talk about the situation. It turns out she's been on to Starkweather's operation, but he's caught onto her snooping. Cash, wanting to take him down, agrees to help her. There's a little snippet about Starkweather talking to someone about getting Cash, then it cuts to him and the journalist pulling over, and we get escort mission number 2. And again, not as bad as people make it out to be. The only difference between her and the Tramp is that you can't get too far away from her, but you can still leave her in areas and just deal with enemies as you need to. And this time we're just going up against plain Jane cops. The only part of this area I had a problem with was the journalist's actual apartment. It was a tiny space full of cops, and you only have one area where you can sort of hide and recover. This is another one of those bits where cover just doesn't really do what it's supposed to, and the enemies can shoot you regardless if they've got line of sight or not. Also, for some reason, they all just decided to charge me, then never did it again. Why is the pathing in this game so borked? Yes, I know it's a 21-year-old game, I'm just complaining for the sake of complaining, leave me be. I died so many times during this session that my first action when spawning in was literally just telling the journalist to wait while I went back up the stairs for the 20th time to handle the janky cops. The journalist tells you that she has everything she needs to incriminate the director, Cash telling her to leave town because he wants to take down Starkweather himself. Getting out the window, Cash comes out the fire escape and some cops notify us that they have snipers in the casino down the road. Oh yeah, it is a casino. I don't know why, it just is. Kill the snipers, get rid of the onslaught of cops, get in a fight with some doors, yada yada. Oh wait, the game crashed. Okay. Do it all again, make your way to the subway, then bam. We're finally here, the gauntlet. So in my infinite wisdom, I told myself that this 7th, technically 8th session was going to be my last because I needed to make the video. Oh, past KT, you put too much faith in yourself. So instead of needing to scroll through, let's say 2.5 hours of footage, I'm now going to be sitting here and recounting nearly 7 hours of footage. You know what this 7 hours of footage contains? 5 scenes. Yep, it took me nearly 7 hours to do 5 scenes, and in the spirit of fairness, I will give the allotted times for how long each one took me at their respective ends. And just in case the game doesn't calculate it properly, I'll do a comparison for y'all with the time of the raw clip. Not because I want to show how bad I am at the game, no, quite the opposite. I want y'all to see how much patience and dedication I have for my craft and the lengths I'm willing to go to do it. And why, for some reason, after all of this, I actually enjoy this game and would honestly play it again. So here we are, folks, the official 3rd act of this escapade. Every scene onward is basically one of those this is the hardest thing I've ever played, because this game does not care how unfair it is, nor does it care about how you actually complete these levels. You want to go in with everything you've got? Go for it. You want to spend literal hours doing stealth? Go for it. It is a proper gauntlet, and honestly, I enjoyed every minute of it because, in a way, Manhunt went from being a gimmicky hack-and-slash flick to a straight-up Bourne-esque action movie. Cash has no right to be able to take down the enemies he does, but screw it. He's got Protag-kun energy, and I am here for it. Okay, back to the actual game. The whole problem with the subway is that you're now fighting SWAT, which are basically Cerberus but with a different coat of paint. These guys are armed to the teeth, have fairly aggressive pathing, and you have extremely limited places to hide and recompose yourself. And there are tons of them, cause of course. I'm not gonna recount all the hardships and deaths, just understand it happened a lot and I managed to get through it. Turning the power back on for the subway train, we backtrack, get on it, then go to the next stop, which we weirdly go from kitted out SWAT to standard beat cops. I don't know, I don't make the rules. Overall, according to the game, this section took me over 45 minutes, and comparing it to the time I've got, yeah, that's pretty accurate. 1 section down, 4 more to go. On to the train yard, and where KT feels more in their element. The first part of the train yard honestly isn't that bad. It's just a waiting game through train cars and shadows, and you can even lead a lot of the enemies in the actual yard to the station where you can make use of some clever corners to take out a few fairly quickly. And yeah, like most sections where the game decides to be unkind, if you die partway through the yard, you gotta start from the beginning. It was also honestly on me for not just getting to the train car with the ladder and the tape on it so I could save and make a new checkpoint. Getting up there also made it 1,000 times easier to actually deal with the situation, cause yeah, you can just stand up there and shoot most of the enemies, cause despite their aimbot accuracy, they had a lot of trouble hitting me. It also made me dealing with the final area a lot easier, when I figured it out. I feel the way I'm taking these guys out is how I'm supposed to, cause like how? How? You literally just witnessed them turning me into Swiss cheese multiple times. Finally getting to the end, the SWAT get a drop on Cash but are randomly taken out by Cerberus, one of them zapping him then knocking out a police body cam. Yeah, over an hour and a half, that sounds about right. I think this section took the longest out of all of them, though I might be wrong. Anywho, 2 down, 3 to go. The journalist is outside Starkweather's place, essentially calling him out as the guys pull up in a garage and threaten to kill Cash, only to be pulled away by something else going on in the estate. So now we're in the courtyard, garden, mausoleum, hedge maze of Starkweather's place, this game went from looking like Manhunt to a budget version of Resident Evil 2, and half expecting zombies or nemesis to pop up. I think the theory or whatever is that Starkweather would use his own estate to film some of his movies, but like, who knows? A lot of this stuff looks cultish, and honestly, with all the crap going on in this game, I wouldn't rule out weird, evil, spicy murder cult. Also, I don't have time to think about it. I got guys to get rid of and in a very goofy and highly inefficient fashion. I know, man, look at that render. I mean fog. That makes it extra spooky. Hiding in the tiny shadows of these trees, then popping out and killing these highly armed tactical mercenaries, then running back under the cover of the tiny shade tree really is just hilarious. Again, Cash should not be able to handle himself in this situation, but I guess his murderous conviction for Starkweather is seeing him through it. Also, fighting guys in a hedge maze with an assault rifle was not on my bingo card, but here we are. Once you get up the stairs into the upper part of the building, there are 2 snipers you take out as more guys move in. Easiest way is for just once again, coax them up to the top, then take them out as they come up the stairs. Getting to the cellar door, we come to the end and hey, it looks like it only took about an hour. Honestly, it felt longer considering how massive this area was and how easy it was to just not understand where to go. Getting into the estate, we're now at the penultimate scene, and I don't have much to say. You now have to exclusively deal with Cerberus units, and Starkweather's estate has cameras. So essentially, if one of the cameras sees you, you get an instant alert. But like most levels, there are some little shadows that just make a lot of the enemy searching tedious, but also laughable. Lots of weirdly placed nooks and crannies that Cash can once again stand in plain view and not be seen. Some of the cameras you can avoid, others you can't, and in classic gaming fashion, there is no indicator of them on your map or if they have a cone of vision. Rockstar essentially said, pay attention, stupid, it's right here. The second part is much the same, but I love how, here in the 11th hour, I've learned that save points worked even if you just walked into them. So our primary goal is to kill the head of Cerberus, get the elevator key, and head up to where Starkweather is. I did this level backwards for some reason. I ended up going down to the basement first, clearing out all the guys, then went back up to get the leader. This guy is in the most awkward little room, and if I recall, I think one of the funniest moments in the entire game happens right before I get to him. So there are cameras in each of these little halls. You can kill the operator to make sure they don't actively come after you anymore if you're spotted. Oh yeah, here it is. Here's the funny bit. Since I'm going to kill the guy on cameras, 2 of them run inside and right past me in the execution cutscene. Basically, because of this, I never get spotted and they just go about their merry way. I don't know, man, whatever. Once the cameras are dealt with, the rest of it just becomes a cakewalk. The leader won't come out of the room he's in, but luckily I was saving all the ammo for my assault rifle and just used the funky door method to take him down. This one also took an hour, but I'm not surprised considering in a way this is sort of the last proper level before the final section. Cash gets into the elevator and makes his way up, only for a massive chainsaw to cut through the door, forcing him to escape and end up in an extremely run-down and decrepit attic. And now we finally come to Piggsy. This guy I've been putting off talking about because, like, with most people, there's no reason to do it until I get to them. Piggsy is sort of like the poster child of Manhunt. There's a lot of lore and theories surrounding who he is, and I feel sort of inclined to talk about them since, well, yeah, he's Piggsy. The game actually introduces him to us pretty early on, with scenes of Cerberus feeding him breaking out, so on and so forth. Firstly, what he is. He's a massive chainsaw-wielding hunter with a pig's head draped over his own, and yeah, he's naked. There's a little wangle-dangle in there, and I did not notice it until after I played. For my own sanity, let's just ignore that. He's also a cannibal and had been eating all the bodies of the guys we've killed thus far. There's also a prevailing theory that he was Starkweather's star before Cash, and that the director used him a lot in his snuff films. He's basically meant to be like the ultimate hunter that Cash could have no way of stopping. I'm gonna openly admit, I technically cheated when I did this fight, and by cheat, I mean I looked up a video on how to actually fight him. I was not about to spend another 20 minutes to an hour or so trying to figure out how to actually do it. I made it this far, I deserved a little assistance. I was also extremely nervous when I got to this point because I knew if anything was gonna kill my potential completion run of this game, it was gonna be this fight. It's not a conventional shoot him until he dies sort of affair. Around the map are glass shards that you have to pick up and do stealth attacks on Piggsy with. There is a pattern to it, and if you mess it up even once, it can screw up the whole flow and his pathing. But hey, I did it! I did the Piggsy fight! Time to get to Starkweather. What do you mean he sends a bunch of thugs after me? What do you mean it's harder because all I have is a loud chainsaw? Once again, the game had one last screw you and threw a massive curveball at me that put me into a fit of tired but unfathomable rage. I managed to get the ones downstairs to break up so I could pick them off, then grab their rifles and took out the two upstairs by Starkweather's office. And no, you can't bring the assault rifle into Starkweather's. You have to kill them with the chainsaw. And guess what? If you die to Starkweather, yep, you gotta do it all over again! And the game crashed. Universe, please, let me beat the game! Yes, I know this bit is dumb because I already did it. Just let me be dramatic! Okay, Starkweather, it's you and me, you ugly sack of crap. Round 2. And I got him. Oh my god, I finally did it. I got him. Where's my fanfare?
Acclaimed movie maker Lionel Starkweather has been found dead today, along with several of his bodyguards, at his estate at the Wapona Hills residential district.
Having sat on this footage for nearly 2 years and forgetting most of my original feelings on the game was probably a terrible idea, but it gave me time to cool and recollect my thoughts on the overall experience in general. I would 100% consider Manhunt to be a good game. Like many of Rockstar's more ambitious outside-of-the-box titles, like Red Dead Redemption, Bully, and The Warriors, Manhunt is brimming with its own energy and style. Even with the limits of the PS2, they managed to create a lot of eerie set pieces, unique locations, and keep me on my toes the whole way. I loved running through a lot of the levels just to see the random locations you can hide in or explore just for the heck of it. And despite most of the sessions taking place in rundown buildings or abandoned city streets, no two ever really felt the same. And the music, man, I love the music. A lot of it is just low ambient hisses with an occasional sting, but it really helped lay the tone of what the whole game was about. I also enjoyed the chunky sound effects of the weapons and pistols, and of course, all of the colorful dialogue. With the amount of cut content from this game, you can tell Rockstar really wanted to go all out and just pack in as much as they could, but honestly, I'm glad they didn't. Due to my ability to sit in corners and wait for as long as I needed, I really didn't feel the weight of how long some of these sections took. The pacing, for the most part, was top-notch, and I never felt like any of the scenarios outstayed their welcome. The only time I would say it became a problem was when the game would pull the unfair lever and just flush you with enemies at the end of certain parts as a middle finger, forcing you to start over large sections. But that's honestly just one of those gameplay designs that one could most likely expect from a game like this. Starkweather is technically watching you the whole time. If he knows you're about to escape, why not make it more difficult? A lot of the BS in this game works well within its world-built narrative. It's not supposed to be fair. The enemies aren't supposed to just lay down and die. You have to get good if you want to survive and make it through. The best example is, yeah, the bit at the end. You can't just shoot Piggsy. You gotta use the base mechanics the game provides you to take down this hulking mass of murderous intent. And of course, Starkweather is going to throw more guys at you in one last push, cause he can. And even then, you don't get the satisfaction of just walking in and killing him. The game forces you into one last conflict where you gotta use the clunkiest weapon in the game. And unfortunately, it wasn't as satisfying my first run through because I was exhausted by the time I got to him. But watching back, I'm proud of you, Past KT. After 20 years of knowing about this game and being forced to play it because of an actor you like, you can finally say you did. So do I like the game? Yeah, I do. I really do. When I had to get the footage for the section I missed, I had a hard time because I had forgotten the controls, but after that, I breezed right through it. Was it a perfect run? Of course not. The game still has its limits and is showing a lot of its age, especially in its mechanics. But I'm not gonna fault it. At the end of the day, I chose to play it, I got through it, and would I play it again? Yeah, honestly, I would. Do I recommend it? Yeah, I really do. If you love stealth action games and want something different from the current staples, pick it up. You'll probably struggle, but considering what Manhunt is about, that might be a part of the fun. As far as I know, the PC version requires mods, but has a lot of support for it. The console version is absolutely fine if you're okay with the flickering graphics. Unless you played on PS4, that one still seems to be fine as of writing this video. Wait, KT, what about the bonus scenes? Yeah, I'm not doing those. I really don't feel like they matter in the grand scheme of things, and like I said, ad nauseum, there are tons of videos on this series as a whole, so why not go give some of those a watch? Will I ever talk about Manhunt 2? The jury is still out on that one. Manhunt 2 is a weird game. I've only ever looked into it once or twice, and like Manhunt, it's got its own set of challenges and odd things. I may one day, but it's not on my radar anytime soon. What about Mr. Nasty? I had a feeling someone might mention him in the comments, so yeah, if I'm going to talk about one of the weird characters in this game/series, I'm going to talk about Mr. Nasty. According to the info I found on him, he's essentially the actual main antagonist of these two games. He's the one who runs the criminal syndicate that Starkweather is a part of, and is primarily responsible for the distribution of the snuff films. Is he ever properly mentioned in the game? No. He's only mentioned in side and promo material for Manhunt itself. It's never been confirmed if he was ever meant to be anything more than just adages to promotional material, or to be an actual character Cash would end up facing. Considering Cash isn't even in Manhunt 2, and that the game's narrative takes a completely different turn, it's pretty much confirmed that we'll never know. So yeah, Manhunt's done. Took 2 years longer than it needed to, but I'm finally free. And by free, I mean it's time for me to go work on something else. We're not quite done on this collection of videos for the Brian Cox trilogy. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you liked this video and would like to see more, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to help me out in other ways, I also have a Patreon. I'll see you all in the next video.